What is that? Yes. By the way, of course, everybody knows about the online travel agencies. Now, so now you can book online. What not everybody knows is that each time you book online, the hotelier is losing 15, 20, 25% of the revenue. And because the profitability is around 10%, it's a good number, you can imagine the effect this is having, okay? And of course, we are very happy because this means that there are many opportunities to improve, to bring a scientific organization also to medium enterprises in tourism, to increase quality, to create quality jobs. In order to have quality jobs in tourism, you need quality hotels. Otherwise, it's just a matter of who's paying less. So of course, tourism is exploding. Apart from COVID, but the trend is an explosion. We're going to have about 2 billion travelers in some years. That's a lot. And it's an interesting application area for machine learning and intelligent optimization. Why? Because the complexity is really enormous. Of course, if you don't go behind the desk, you don't notice, but the complexity is enormous, as I will explain. Of course, you have competition, you have game theory, like hoteliers playing with customers, designing the rule of the games. You have a lot of diversity in customers, in periods of the years, in kind of hotels, in accommodation types. You have a deadly combination of random noise and small numbers, because hotels are not dealing with thousands of rooms. Typically, you're dealing with 100 rooms. So there are small numbers. This means that you have to apply a lot of sound estimation techniques. You have dynamics. What is good that you have abundant data now, which is produced now as part of the process, which of course you can use to build models. By the way, it's very difficult to design explicit models now, which are mathematically detailed. There is so much noise and fuzziness, which you really need machine learning. And what is also positive is quite easy to experiment, okay? You just have to convince hotelier, but then there is no human life which is going to be lost, not like in healthcare, okay? You can experiment. The worst that can happen is you're going to miss 10 euros plus or minus per customer. It's not a big deal. So it's a nice area. Okay, of course, time is short. This is a quick tutorial. So there, of course, there are a huge number of topics. There is customer relationship management, collaborative recommendation systems, clustering. We have no time to go into those issues. I will just show you some shells on the beach. Now, while the sea of knowledge is open in front of us. So I will talk about pricing, what is called revenue management. So dynamic pricing, related also to optimization based on simulators, simulation-based optimization. Then I will tell you about what we did for optimal allocation of rooms, which of course you don't know because we didn't know before entering this area. To start, of course, let us cite Galileo's, okay? To measure what is measurable and make measurable what is not, okay? And this is the basis, because if you can measure your objectives, then you can solve it with optimization. This is why optimization is really, for me, we were discussing also with Panos, the real source of power. If you understand, if you manage optimization techniques, you can solve so many problems that the normal people will see as completely different, okay? But you measure, you define your objective, and then you start. Okay, it will be very quick. So pricing, because pricing, finding the proper price is very important. Why? Because price is the longest lever now to increase profitability. So again, I don't have time to go into details, but if you work, for example, on reducing costs, now for a 1% of the reduction in fixed cost, you have about a 1% increase in profitability. Well, vice versa with price, you manage to improve prices by 1%, you have a multiplier that is about 6, okay? So you get 6%. Okay, price is abstract. Our brain is wet. What do you mean by that? People are not equations. Now, if you're familiar with economics, now there was classical economics, which is of course beautiful mathematically. You define your objectives, like a person has a utility function, which is a function, and the problem is the person will decide by maximizing the utility function. Beautiful. And then there was modern economics, in particular, bounded rationality. I'm very envious of Herbert Simon. You know that he worked also in computer science and he got a Nobel Prize. So you can consider the only person working in computer science getting the Nobel Prize in economics. Okay. And he based a lot, the discussion on computer science, because if you want to solve, as you know very well, an optimization problem, okay, mathematically say find the minimum. Go and find it. How long will it cost? How much information do you need, etc., etc. So he came up with this concept of bounded rationality. Because forget about finding the optimal solution with optimal information. People will reason with what they have, with a very partial information. With a time which is very limited, it's not the age of the universe, bounded rationality. And this means that also part of economics is becoming an experimental science, like physics, if you want. So you experiment with real people in real situations, you develop this kind of flexible models. Okay, this is a standard example. See the stripe in the center. Is the intensity constant, yes or not? Who is seeing a constant intensity? No one, okay, you're normal. So if you cut it, is it the same intensity? Yes, okay, now you know it, believe me, okay, you can do it. You can print it and cut it. I go back. Do you see now the same intensity? Now you know the solution. No, you keep being wrong. So of course, to err is human, to persevere is also very human, and the fact that mistakes are systematic, they can be reproduced. It means that you can develop a theory, which is experimental theory. You can develop models about how people decide in the real world. And this is also a nice effect. It's called bait effect. Okay. Initial situation. So you have two possibilities. Weekend in Paris, 1,000, breakfast included. Weekend in Rome, breakfast included, 1,000, same price. Imagine people divide 50-50. There undecided. Now, add a third irrelevant option, like weekend in, Rome, 1,000 euro, but breakfast excluded. Of course, nobody is going to get weekend in Rome with breakfast excluded, because the same price you can get also with breakfast. Now you see more people are moving to the right, so are moving to Rome, okay? So the second slide is Rome, of course. Why is that? It's surprising because there's no meaning in rational standard economics. So the explanation that has been given is that our brain, which is again very wet, very, very fuzzy, tends to prefer easy comparison. So it is very easy to compare Rome with breakfast and Rome with no breakfast, same price, very easy. Our brain is so happy that it will prefer Rome. This is a very strange effect. It's called bait effect. Okay, so our brain loves simple comparison. So again, a lot of economics now is becoming experimental. You are studying real people, and again, in many cases, you need this kind of flexible modeling, which is, for example, what you can do with machine learning. It's very difficult to come up with equations like, in standard statistics. You need many parameters, a lot of flexibility, and of course, as soon as you have the model, you can start with optimization. And guess what? Most of the problems in this area cannot be solved exactly. Now they are exponential. So of course, there is a lot of space for heuristics. Okay, so now we'll discuss a bit about pricing. So of course, the definition is you want to sell the room at the right price, okay, at the right time. Why at the right time? Okay. Now, if you are an hotelier, you have two important times. No? One time is the check-in time, when the customer arrives. The other time is the time when you sell the room, okay? So you will have to deal with the two times. So why, for example, somebody is asking for a room and you would like to say no? At the beginning, say why? Why should you say no? Okay, so by the way, there is a question for you. What do hoteliers share with greengrocers, for example? Who is not in economics, not the right answer? So the answer is a perishable inventory. So what hoteliers are selling is nights, okay? If, for example, today is the 6th of June. If you sell your night for today, okay, otherwise it's lost forever. You cannot go back in the past or say, okay, let's go back in the past. So perishable inventory. And in addition, for hotels, you have that the sale process occurs in time, okay? So you will start, for example, in January to sell rooms for July, August, September, okay? So there is this pickup of reservations in time until you have the check-in time, and then the story is decided. So you have the so-called booking curve. It means how are reservations for a given future day arriving on time. And of course, you have one for every day. Okay, so of course, the airlines were the first to start with dynamic pricing. Now, as very, even normal people know it, that if you try Ryanair, you try, you get a price. If you try tomorrow, you get a different price. Typically, it's going to be a bit higher. Why? Because also encouraging people to reserve. Here are some trends. Just a very short history of what is called revenue management. This kind of historical term for optimizing prices. So we are in the 80s. There was the deregulation in the United States for the airline companies. Competitors like People Express, who came out dumping prices in order to fill the planes. And of course, incumbent companies like American Airlines were suffering a lot. They were on the border of bankruptcy. Okay, and then there was this Robert Crandall who say, okay, let us give a job to some mathematicians and computer scientists. Now they invested a lot of money in order to come up with an intelligent response, which, by the way, was not follow the competition or you also lower your prices, but was be intelligent and try to understand how many seats to sell in the different periods for different customers, in particular tourists and businessmen, okay? You know, the businessmen are prepared to pay more. Why? Because the company is paying. Also. And then typically they need to reserve in urgent times. They cannot reserve months in advance. So they came up with intelligent strategies to sell different type of seats in different slots of periods. For example, adding also non-refundable rates, etc., etc. Why? To avoid cannibalization. Cannibalization is the fact that a businessman is buying a seat intended for a tourist at a cheaper price. So different theory. Do you remember that even now, if you have a flight and you have a Saturday in between, you're going to pay less. You say, why? Why? Because the typical businessman will be at home at Saturday. If you stay Saturday, you're probably not a businessman, you are a tourist. So that's a way to distinguish. And the end of the story, very positive. So they went from bankruptcy to plus 14% of revenue and 45% of profits. Okay. And by the way, the other company went out of business. So being intelligent, even in time of a crisis, pays off. For the hotels, it took more time. Hotels are more complicated. You know, in the airplanes, in some airplanes, just a matter of putting a curtain between business class and touristic class. So it's very easy. Hotels are more complex. The first one was Marriott, about 95. Again, huge investment in software and plus $200 million per year, approximately 1,000 more per room per year, which is huge, of course. Just to give you an understanding of the basic way of reasoning. Now, by the way, this is Littlewood 72. So imagine that you have two classes of people, tourists, businessmen. The tourist is prepared to pay 40, the businessman 80. And then imagine that businessmen arrive after the tourist. This is the worst case. Why? If you have the contrary, of course, first you sell to the businessman what is left, you sell for a cheaper price to the tourist. So the worst case is businessmen arrive after the tourist. So can you define different prices? So ask people, are you a tourist? Okay, you pay 40. Are you a businessman? You pay 80. No, you cannot do it. This is price discrimination. It's also very, very bad. No? But you can do something similar. So you have a physical room. You define in your software two virtual rooms, one for businessmen, call it superior, one basic, maybe corresponding to the same room, or with some aesthetic changes, like I give you, I don't know, a flower in the room, okay? And so you can do price discrimination if you have some smartness, like defining two virtual rooms. Okay, so now the issue is decide how many rooms to sell for business or for tourists in every period. By the way, this is called capacity control. It was the first way to control the system. Now, most of the control is with pricing, because a way to close the room is push the price so high that effectively nobody will buy. But in those times, it was not so easy to, synchronize prices. We didn't have, the internet was beginning. And so. Okay, so imagine that today, you have 70 rooms for July 15th, okay? Check-in date. Now, a tourist is requesting a room, and if you take it, you get 40. If you wait and say, no, sorry, I don't have any rooms for you, and you wait, you will sell the room only if the demand by businessmen is going to be higher or equal to 70 rooms. Otherwise, the room will remain there unsold. So of course you can multiply high price that you're getting by businessmen times the probability that the demand by business is greater than the number of rooms that you have available. Otherwise, then you compare the two. So high price times probability or small price, and then you decide rationally. Okay, by the way, risk should also enter the picture, but this is if you're just going to get for the average. So a simple way to decide whether to open sale to tourists based on what? Based on probability, which means that you have to estimate how much demand you will get by businessmen. Okay, so you have to set up a process. If you complicate a little bit, so forget about tourists arriving before businessmen. So now they're mixed. You can have different customers. You can have more than two fare classes. So you want to find a control policy so that at each day, you know how many rooms to sell for the different kinds of fares. And of course, as you can imagine, we are ending up with dynamic programming. So imagine that check-in day is day 0. Go back in the past. No? So you are 1 day before check-in. What is the optimal offering? Of course, if this is the last day, you will sell everything that you have because otherwise it's lost. If you go back in time, 2, 3, 4, you can set up a Bellman equation. So the value of the revenue to go today is going to be the revenue to go tomorrow, which is already optimized because you are building your solution by dynamic programming, plus the expected maximum revenue of the decision that you make at time t. So you end up with dynamic programming. Of course, it's very easy to complicate the problem. For example, adding choice models. So each customer is going to decide based on preferences. You have many kinds of rooms, different properties. So things are getting complicated very rapidly. So no plan survives contact with the enemy. In this case, if you want to solve reasonable size dynamic programming in this sector. By the way, you have to solve a different program for each day, for each kind of room, for a period which can be a year. Typically, you need very strong assumptions like linearity of elasticity of demand. You need to estimate the arrival of a reservation. This is subject to huge errors. You need to estimate elasticity. I will talk about elasticity in a moment. You need to estimate choice model. You need to understand what is going on in the competition. everything is subject to huge errors. This is why you want to use real-time, call it reactive heuristics. So when time goes on, you will understand more and more about what is happening, how many reservations you're getting, and of course you can revise your optimal strategies. What is very positive is that you have this window of time in which you're selling your check-in rooms. Okay, so typically this can be for touristic places 6 months. So even if at the beginning the information is very uncertain, you're going to make mistakes, there is still time to learn about what is going on and to remedy some of the mistakes that you made. A lot of opportunities for learning online. Okay, so to go very fast, what are the new opportunities for determining optimal prices? Okay, so by the way, traditional revenue management, that is this activity, is going to give excellent results, in particular if you start from static prices. But you will reach a limit that you can surpass. In order to go beyond that, again, you need more and more realistic models with machine learning. And then you want to use the models with simulation-based optimization. By the way, you want a model for specific hotels because hotels are very different. Okay, they have different targets, different costs, different quality levels. So this kind of model have to be adapted to a single hotel, not just to a class. Price has a semantic value. Okay, so here is Warren Buffett. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. And people in the area talk about value-based selling, which is very basic also for hotels. Of course, customers do not know the costs of the hotel. They don't care about the cost. In some cases, even the hotelier don't know the cost a lot. Okay? So value-based selling means understanding, for which customer your hotel is going to be appreciated, so that, again, by optimization, you can find an optimal match between your hotel and the customers who are going to like your hotel. So again, opportunities to use optimization. Even this morning, there was a talk about Pareto optimality. Pareto. Again, multiple objectives to optimize. You need to define trade-offs. And this is very positive for hotels because value has many dimensions. No? So, of course, you have a generic price and quality, but then quality can be declinated in tens of ways. No? You have hotels appealing to different targets. So think about, for example, transforming weaknesses into features. No? You have many examples. Like in Italy, we have in the south, Matera, we have caves. And people 100 years ago were used to live in caves together with animals. So, kind of strange. Now, guess what? There were intelligent people got the caves, they renovated, or they put air conditioning, and now they sell it like 1,000 euros. You have the experience to live in caves, and so on and so forth. Now, so in many cases, it's just an issue of understanding which kind of customers are going to like the experience. Okay, so of course, if you think about Pareto optimal, imagine your hotel is there. No? So here you have a generic quality and price. In general, of course, there will be many more dimensions. But in this case, the hotel, the green hotel is a loser. Okay, it's dominated because higher price, lower quality. Nobody will reserve there unless you manipulate the customers. But manipulating the customers is not a long-term policy, okay? Because of course you can pay a lot in advertisement, you will convince somebody to reserve, but after some time, your hotel will be out of business. You have the yellow hotels, of course, here there is a trade-off. Now, some people are preferring cheaper, some people are preferring better quality. The dangerous hotels are the ones on the Pareto frontier, of course, because they are better both for quality and for price. Okay, so the issue, of course, for the hotel is to reach the Pareto frontier, and then you will have customers arriving here with their particular combination of objectives and meeting the appropriate hotel on the Pareto frontier. So again, by first understanding, how and how many customers touch the Pareto frontier, you can adjust the position of your hotel in order to intercept those hotels. Okay, now elasticity. Again, very, very quickly, because this is a short introduction. So, a big part of the process of optimizing prices, as you can imagine, is prediction of the demand. Okay, because you have the usual response to demand. So here you have a typical demand curve. Now this is classical economics. So you have price, you have number of rooms sold. Imagine that you have no limit, for simplicity. So for example, for a price of 100, you're going to sell, imagine in one day, 50 rooms. And of course, the revenue is price times the number of rooms, which is the area. This is simple to understand also by hotelier. Okay, so this is the area. Of course, if you go to extreme cases like here, you have a businessman prepared to pay 190, but you sell only 10 rooms and the area is very small. Here, vice versa, you sell many rooms, but at a cheap price. And of course, in this case, optimization is trivial, is the point which maximizes the area. And again, this is standard in economics. And what is going to happen here? That if you have a fixed price, you're going to sell 50 rooms for 100 euros, while you had people prepared to pay much more. Okay, this is standard economics. So what are you going to do now? Well, you have that this surplus here, this is the additional area in profit that you would get by answering a customer one after the other, starting from the one who is prepared to pay more. Okay, you pay 200, I give it. You pay 190, I give it. Okay, you're going to get all this area. This is called the consumer surplus. So this is something which is money which is remaining in the pockets of the consumer. Of course, hotels and everybody, because this is a classical economics, is trying to get some of it. How? By differentiating. Because if I have two prices here, okay, and I sell this at this price and this at this price, of course, I get the blue area. Okay, so by setting up different prices, you can capture more and more of the consumer surplus, so it will get into the pockets of the hotelier. This is standard economics. How do you do it in practice? Because of course, I told you, you cannot ask, are you a tourist? Okay, cheap. Are you a businessman? Okay, high. You cannot do it. But what you can do is to put fences, fencing to avoid cannibalization. Again, very briefly, for example, if you stay on Saturday, you pay less. Why? Because typically businessmen don't travel on Saturday. So it's a subtle way to distinguish. Reservation advance. Typically, businessmen cannot reserve 6 months in advance. They need it for the next week. Not refundable. Minimum stay. Minimum stay is such a source of stress for hotelier. We have a recent paper about minimum stay. Maybe we'll say a couple of words. Because if you start selling for August, like one day here, one day here, one day here, then you have somebody looking for 2 weeks, you cannot sell it because already so a lot of effort to set up minimum stay, deposits, etc. Of course, what you have to do is there's no need to ask some polite, like how much would you like to pay? It's not polite. So you need this way so that the customer will confess, will self-report. Okay, like, okay, I stayed this Saturday. Okay, maybe you are a businessman. Because pricing is evolving. From the official price, a long time ago in the hotels, you had the official price. Who cares? Now, people are talking about best available rate. Okay, independent rates from related rates, we'll see in a moment, fixed to dynamic prices, products from through market-based pricing. This is the situation that you get in certain hotels. So tables filled with numbers for different seasons, for different days a week, weekend, weekly days, for age of children. Children are terrible. So you have hotels, you have a separate table for children. So if you have children of 1 year, is going to pay this, 2, 3 years, 4 years. What is the problem? And this is not understood by the typical small size of is that by having independent numbers, you lose the possibility to control the system. You lose the possibility to experiment, because if you have 1,000 cells filled with numbers independent, what can you experiment? There is no way in which you can develop an experiment and understand something. Okay, so again, you need, what do you need to do? Control theory, experiment. So for example, if you have a big truck with 30 wheels, no one would think about having a separate steering for each wheel. Of course, theoretically, you could do a bit better, no, some curves, but nobody's doing it because you're going to lose control. You need one steering wheel to control all 30 wheels, okay? So the analogy is you're going to have one price for a given room for a given day, and then a set of algorithmically related prices, so that if you raise your base price, then all the related prices are going to change. Now you can control something. Okay, so rates, algorithmic rates, depending on bar, which is very trivial for us. Again, it's not so trivial for hotelier, because they think, but I can do the same with independent tables. No, you cannot do the same because you lose control of the system. Dynamic pricing. Because more and more people are prepared now, also customers, to accept dynamic prices. So changing every day, every hour, in certain cases, for different types of accommodations, always transparent. So you need to be transparent. What are the benefits? Of course, optimization. No, in the prices in real time to the demand, to the kind of customer, you are going to squeeze more and more revenues. Okay, automation, of course, you don't need to do it by hand. You can have your optimization software now running. Possible disadvantages, of course, there can be some perceived injustice, but again, who is the judge? There is no guaranteed need to go to Milos. Now, if you pay, uncertainty by customers. No, they require, of course, better organization, consistency, precise processes, software. Because today, by the way, we are here at the beach, so I chose this picture. We are in a cycle of continuous improvement. I don't need to say that computers are getting faster and faster. From when I started, computers got 10 million times faster, not 10 or 100. So I imagine we had difficulties in those times to have enough memory, enough CPU. Now, at least a factor of 10 million faster, cheaper, and still going. This is America's Cup at the beginning, 1851. This is America's Cup 2021. Of course, the bolts are different, but what you don't see is what is behind the scene. Of course, behind the scene, you have a lot of simulation-based optimization. Also because of the rules of the America's Cup, they can do a lot of experimentation in order to come up with better design. And this is what hoteliers are becoming. So the hotel manager has to do this kind of activity, to set up a software so that they can run experiments. And of course, many experiments hopefully are run with simulators. Why do you need an hotel simulator? Because if you run an experiment with a real hotel, first it will take maybe 1 year to find the result, and then maybe you lost a lot of money. So if you can develop a model so that you can run a number of experiments that you want with the times of the software, then of course, you can optimize much better. So even hoteliers are becoming a kind of scientists. This is the typical scientific loop. So you have your objectives, you set up experiments, you see, for example, how customers respond. You collect data, you develop models, and when you have better and better models, you can improve your optimization and so on and so forth. So you have this cycle, which is the typical scientific cycle from Galileo Galilei onwards. So prediction and optimization. This is another figure which is easy to understand. So again, here you're selling the night of August 15th, which is probably the most expensive night in Italy. Everybody wants to go on vacation on August 15th. Here is the start of sale, maybe 6 months in advance. And here is the number of rooms which are sold in time. Again, you have this collection of reservations. Here you have today, okay? Now, if you can make a prediction like this curve, for example, here you see that the prediction is that customer will request more rooms than you have because hotels have a limited space. So this is called overbooking, okay? So of course, this means that you will stop selling here because then, okay, everything is already sold. So of course, it is very intuitive that this is an opportunity to do what? To increase prices, okay? Because there is a lot of demand. You're selling for low prices too soon. Then there will be people asking for rooms here, and you will have finished your rooms. Of course, the big question is how much can I increase prices? Because the optimal situation in this case is to arrive that you sell all rooms. If you exaggerate, of course, you can remain with some empty rooms, which is a waste. So in order to understand how this curve is changing if you change prices, you have to experiment to determine the so-called elasticity. So how people respond to changes in prices, okay? So if I change my price, what is the change in products, in this case, rooms that I will sell? This is called elasticity. So how people respond to changes in price. Definition is, of course, the percent quantity change divided by the percent price change. Percent because you don't care if it's dollars or euros. And by the way, if you know partial derivatives, you can define it with partial derivatives, but typically hoteliers cannot talk about derivatives. They understand more. You apply a small price change, you measure what is the variation in rooms. And of course, elasticity is critical. It's very easy to demonstrate. Believe me that, of course, if you reduce your prices by, say, 10%, and you will not get at least 10% more rooms, you will lose, no? Because at the end, you need to multiply. So what you find very easily is that if the elasticity, by the way, the absolute value, because the elasticity is negative, but if the absolute value is bigger than 1, you better decrease price. You are in the elastic zone. So if you decrease price, customer will respond by buying much more, so that at the end you're better off. Vice versa, here you want to increase price, you are in the elastic zone. Of course, the equilibrium is when elasticity is equal to 1. What is the point here is estimating elasticity, because in order to estimate elasticity, you have to play with small changes in price and measure what's happening. And again, as you know very well, this is not trivial because the numbers are small. Okay? If you have an hotel with 100 rooms or 10 rooms, even worse, and you say, okay, for the next period, I will change prices by plus 10%. Then I will measure the next day how many reservations I'm going to get. It's more or less, but the numbers are small. And with small numbers, of course, you have to defend yourself against chance. This is what we explain to hoteliers, that statistics, because of course, statistics is a scary word for hoteliers, because statistics. No? Well, say, okay, it's a kind of insurance against the dazzle that you may get due to chance. No? Again, you may try to increase prices, and maybe you get for the next day more reservation. What does it mean? That the more you raise price, the more you get? No, probably it's just noise caused by randomness, okay? So of course, in addition to the estimates, which is what most family-owned hotels are doing, Okay, you need also to find out what is the degree of significance. So what is the probability of getting a similar result by chance? If this probability is high, we know very well, of course, that the significance is low. So you have a high risk. Okay, I want to be short, but of course we set up experiments. For example, here you have Poisson distribution, different lambdas. Imagine like number of rooms that you're selling in a day. You have the real percent increase of average reservations that you are supposed to get with your elasticity. And here is the percent of wrong conclusions that you do just by a single experiment. Of course, it's huge. Now, for a typical hotel, you see there is a large area where concluding about raising or lowering prices for a single experiment is like flipping a coin. And this is surprising for hoteliers. Of course, they're not experts in statistics. And they say, how do we optimize? Well, I try, then I measure the next day. If I get more, I keep it. Otherwise, come on, you have to be more systematic. And of course, if elasticity is not linear, but non-linear, even worse, if you have to take care of non-linearities. Okay, so to make it very short, how to optimize pricing in the past? Gut feelings, we know, tradition, imitation. This is something which really is surprising. Imitation, so you have a lot of hoteliers imitating what the neighbor is doing. But of course, the assumption is that the neighbor knows something more than you do otherwise. Or trying by hand, again, estimating, or hoping is not a plan. Every hotelier has many hopes. By the way, if you want to really understand the power of an hotel, you have to call a consultant, because if you've been in the same hotel for 50 years, you don't know what is the real value that you have. Now you have to get something from outside. So again, the complexity is enormous. The human analytical capability is limited. What can you do today? Is, of course, use machine learning and intelligent optimization techniques. Now, so imagine this very simple example. What is the additional revenue that you get from a single booking request? Of course, you have to know your costs. This is something reasonably easy. Okay, you don't need machine learning. You know how much you pay to change the room, how much you pay in electricity. Okay, and of course, this you can estimate with explicit models. Okay, then what you want to estimate is, again, the probability that the customer is going to accept the price proposal. This is related to the elasticity. How will customer respond to prices? Because at the end, you multiply what you ask by the probability that the customer is giving the money to you, okay? And this you can do, of course, with machine learning. After you have the models of your specific hotel, then, of course, you can use optimization to come up with better and better pricing strategies. So again, the foundation of the new techniques, not only for tourism and hospitality, of course, is this combination of machine learning, also known as learning from data. The fact that it is a machine, if you want, is irrelevant. You want to learn from data. So you don't need to have explicit models. You need abundant data, and you can learn. And then, of course, leverage the models to automate the discovery of improving solutions. Okay. Very quick introduction to machine learning in 5 minutes. What is a model? Of course, it's like a function. As you have an input, you get an output. For example, prices, different days, different, and the final profit. Okay. Why do we need models? I already told you, because experimenting with the real hotels is requiring years and is requiring a lot of potential losses. We are in Greece. And which kind of models can you do? Of course, you have the kind of models of traditional artificial intelligence based on rules. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. No less a citation, so on and so forth. This is the traditional first phase of artificial intelligence. But you have also machine learning starting from the 60s, becoming more popular in the 80s. Of course, the basic observation is that 99% of your brain is very similar to the brain of your dog. You may be happy or not, but this is a true fact, okay? So again, if you show a picture of a tree to a 3-year kid, you say, okay, it's a tree. If I ask you, give me a formal definition of a tree so that you will distinguish what is a tree, what is not, you will have to work for weeks and not being able to come up with an explanation, okay? So of course, non-parametric models, why non-parametric? Well, they are parameters, but they have so many parameters that they have the flexibility to deal with more or less all smooth processes. Like, for example, here I have the movie, the customer, recommendation, for example, Netflix, or very similar for hotels. Of course, machine learning again means learning from data, much more than memorizing. So of course, like learning, again, imitate from human people. Human learning is unifying, compressing different cases by discovering the underlying explanatory laws, okay? So learning is only a means of achieving the real goal, that is generalization, because being able to work also for new cases, provided they come from the same probability distribution, of course. Otherwise, you cannot start. Of course, the dream is solving problems without programming and explicit rules. Is it laziness? No, so laziness can be positive, but it's not. It's about robustness, like gentle degradation at the edge. By the way, there is no self-driving mountain bike yet. Kind of complicated, but we human people are very good at going down without killing ourselves. It's about flexibility, so solving different kinds of problems with the same technique. And again, how do you learn? You learn by defining your goal, like you want a reasonable agreement between your flexible system and a set of examples, and then you use optimization. But again, this is only means, not an end. You want to generalize. And therefore, you have to change your objective function a little bit. Can we do it? Yes, of course, we do it very well with our brain, neural networks. And of course, you need to imitate nature. No? This is Leonardo da Vinci, but be careful, try to imitate also our nature, not just simple animals. Supervised machine learning means that you have a teacher giving examples, for example, room offered with a given price. Will the customer buy or not? Okay, you get thousands, different situations, and you come up with a model so that you can predict if I change the price, if I change something in the property of the rooms, what is going to happen. Again, the overall idea is flexible models with many parameters, so many that they call it non-parametric, kind of confusing. And the determination, of course, is by optimization, like in statistics. Maximum likelihood estimation, statistics is optimization applied to determining parameters. Okay, so after you have the model, of course, you start with optimization. Don't panic. Again, what is surprising to me now, everybody, I'm talking normal people, not we. We are not normal. Okay. Normal people now like to talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, everybody's talking about that. If you're speaking about optimization, they get scared. Optimization, what is that? Or maybe they think about optimizing the restaurant. So, of course, we have to explain that this is possible. We explain by, for example, tuning a radio. If you have a simple radio, you can tune it by hand, try your possibilities. Promise, if you go to this, of course, where you have, tens of different buttons, of course, we know very well that we have the curves of dimensionality. So the dimension of the problem is getting so big that in practice, you will never be able to solve the problem exhaustively. No? We know very well, we are in optimization. Again, if you have many dimensions, there are just too many places that you can hide in a dimensional space so that people will find you, okay? And of course, you can come up with estimates of how long it's going to take to determine your price with respect to the age of the universe, and people get very surprised. Again, brute force is fine to solve simple problems. No, if you have something more, of course, you need intelligent optimization techniques. And again, the typical reaction of an hotelier is, come on, I mean, I manage an hotel, it's not a spaceship, no? But again, come up with the numbers. For example, we explain, okay, if you have a room type, dynamic prices, 10 values for each price, multiply, you get this number. We're going to do that by hand, no? Or, you know, by brute force. And of course, we like to use this kind of local search. Local search is the basic building block, you know, which is underlying gradient descent, which is underlying trying, you know, small changes, seeing if it is improving or not. Of course, leading you to attractors, which are locally optimal points. Then again, after you start reaching attractors, what can you do? Of course, you can start. But again, we like to use memory, like again, optimization from at least 100 years. So after you sample points, you develop some local models, and you're trying to use the local models in order to improve, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the picture is, of course, that in the past, now the hoteliers are doing, again, most of the hoteliers are really living at the edge of chaos. They are so stressed because they work a lot, you know, they have to follow so many different streams. They're getting crazy. And of course, we go and suggest them, relax. You know, you can set up models, simulators, intelligent optimization. You can relax and go on vacation yourself instead of. Now, apart from that, of course, there's a lot of job to be done with human relationship, which in many cases is overlooked because they are so taken by, you know, daily activities. Of course, we have success cases. These are real hotels. I don't want to spend time, but for example, in this case, year to year plus 19% revenue per available room. So they are huge numbers. I imagine that the profitability of an hotel, if you take, you know, a business point of view. So if you consider also the investment in the hotel, between 5 and 10%. So having this kind of results is incredible. Okay, now my time is more or less finished, but I want to spend, if you give it to me, another 5 minutes. Do I get another 5 minutes on this? Where's the chair? Okay, a couple of minutes. So, surprising innovation. Go very quick here. A day in the life of a receptionist. So you have days here, you have rooms with numbers, and then you have reservations. Okay, you have to decide how to reserve a specific room for a reservation. So you may end up with a picture like this one. And somebody's coming, is asking for 2 weeks. Can you do it or not? This is the problem, because theoretically now, and also in practice, you should start permuting assignments now in order to put different dispositions so that to free contiguous space. In practice, it's going to take forever. In many cases, you have to stop selling in the web when you are close to 85%, 90%, because you are afraid to go in overbooking, which is a deadly risk for hotelier because it's very costly. So, of course, because of dimensionality, again, it's a huge problem. If you start playing, you are reminded of Tetris, okay, which is a game which you probably know very well, developed by this Russian researcher, a colleague of us, who are spending time in games. And for a very interesting story. There will be a movie probably also about the story. And so you have, as you know, pieces falling down, you have to place them. Of course, what is the analogy here? The pieces are the reservations. You have to decide in which room to place the reservation in order to keep contiguous space available for reservations arriving. Again, we were not aware of this problem, but we were talking with people spending a lot of time, in certain cases weeks, in winter, to find proper adjustments. Come on, there are better ways, okay? So we have a publication in a journal in hospitality, And to make it very short, this is the starting situation, okay? If you optimize, you get this one. So for example, here you're getting 2 rooms which are completely empty by packing in a better way the reservation, of course, without changing in time, just changing the rooms. Okay, so of course, different heuristic, but to make it short, it's a kind of lazy just in time. So wait until check-in, don't fix a reservation before, then go in a certain order, starting from the largest reservation, fill it in a greedy manner, and you get the optimal solution. So this is the end of the story. So if a customer is asking, do you have a space for me for a week? If you say yes, just by counting how many reservations you have per day, then you will find it. Otherwise, no. There's no in between. Oh, we will let you know in a week. Okay, so this was very surprising for us and also very surprising for hotelier. And this is probably the best possibility that also small and medium-sized hotels have to improve profits by doing nothing, because you have the software working for you. And of course, we have a lot of experiments, simulators, in order to show that for hotels which are, for example, hotels which are typical in Italy, but also in Germany, in Greece, you can easily get 50% improvement in revenues just by, again, avoiding to fix rooms prematurely, wait until the last minute, etc., etc. By the way, some companies are going in the contrary direction, like personalization. Also, also big chains. So big chains not always organized in the best way. They're asking customers, now, of course, with a good intention to give a better service, to pick their favorite rooms. This is going in the contrary direction, because if the customer is fixing rooms, you will lose this possibility of rearranging reservation in order to fill completely the hotel. Okay, and of course, other processes. Okay, we got a lot of international exposure also in normal newspapers. Conclusions. Again, hotels have enormous opportunities to organize themselves in a scientific manner, in particular also small and medium-sized hotels, which have difficulties in organizing their business. Through machine learning, you can develop this kind of personalized models that were impossible a few years ago. Remember, the computers now much faster, and you can use them in the cloud, so you don't even need a computer in the hotel. And when you have a model, you have intelligent optimization techniques, of course, you can exploit the models to find better and better profits, but also organization, because you have everything running. Okay, of course, the work is in progress. We are very open to collaboration, both scientifically, but also if you are in contact with hotel chains, give me the reference, we will contact them. Again, University of Trento, now the company is Hotel Cloud, is becoming part of Team System, which is one of the biggest players in software in Italy. Okay, thank you very much. Here, the numbers, the faster it is to develop very precise models. The challenge is for this kind of small and medium-sized hotels. They can go from say 20 to about 100 rooms. That is more difficult. You need more time, of course, to develop models because of statistics. For the bigger one. So if you have an hotel chain, we will be happy to work with that. But what we are getting also hotels in Italy, because the majority of hotels in Italy are small and medium size. This is that. And now they can actually get organized in a cloud. They don't need to buy computers. We do it for that.
The second question has to do with data. You mentioned a little bit about service. Where do online Windows and I start clicking, Google starts knowing that I'm looking at Windows.
Sure.
Where this shows.
Well, very interesting question, and the situation is very complicated. So the sources of data can be different. What we observe is that the most relevant data for an individual there is in reservation space. Because if there is an event, and you have the software is working 24 hours a day, we immediately notice that the derivative and the other reservation is increasing, and immediately you have an immediately raise the price. Then, of course, you can correct the next day. I imagine that knowledge of the company